Today we're talking reformulations. A reformulation is when a fragrance's scent has changed after a certain year, usually because of new regulations in the industry or because a company's been bought over. These legendary fragrances have been almost ruined as much as the new seasons ruined The Simpsons. Okay, so maybe most of these 10 fragrances haven't been completely ruined, but some of them have. But I would say most of them have taken at least a big hit. Now, a legendary fragrance are usually going to be fragrances that were famous from their older versions when they were really popular. They've gone into the mainstream, and just over time whittles down everything. All good things must come to an end. And I'd say that you need to be careful before you buy these fragrances. You need to know what you're getting yourself into. Don't just buy because of their hype that they have. And in this video, I'm actually going to give you alternatives, which I think are probably going to be better. They're more modern alternatives that you can go for instead. So hopefully you guys find this useful. Let me know in the comments down below, guys, what do you think is the main reason that fragrances get reformulated over the years? Let's get started. Oh, and this video was created because of this comment suggestion in one of our recent uploads. So if you guys have any other video ideas, make sure to leave them down in the comments below. La Nuit de l'Homme Eau de Toilette. Now, this fragrance went crazy popular online because of Jeremy.
This is the best fragrance to impress a lady.
I think at one point he actually poured it on his head. Was I hallucinating? I swear he did that in a video, guys. Video editing unicorn will put it up if she can find it. This fragrance is so romantic. It's one of the sexiest balanced cardamom and lavender woods fragrance in the game. It is so beautiful. It's not too sweet. It's not too rich. It's a very easy to wear fragrance, but all the formulations, I haven't smelled them myself, but I've always heard that they were more rich, all the formulations, and I kind of know what they mean because now we have a modern formulation sort of in La Nuit de l'Homme Bleu Electrique, which a lot of people say revived the vintage La Nuit de l'Homme, made by the same perfumer. So that kind of sort of has a more fresh opening with the ginger, but it does smell very similar. This lasts about 4 hours now in today's formulations. If you can get a vintage bottle pre-2014, then you'll have a good version of La Nuit de l'Homme. The 2009 to 2011 bottles are apparently the best, but they're very hard to find. I don't think it's worth spending too much money on La Nuit de l'Homme. Just get the Blue Electric if you can, because that's probably going to be more affordable these days. Easily one of the best dating DNAs out there. Jean-Paul Gaultier Le Male. It used to be the clubbing fragrance back in the day. Got reformulated in 2011, I believe. That's when it got gutted. It went from being a very loud, strong performing fragrance to being very soft. I did smell it when it wasn't in its vintage formulation. My family members used to wear this, and I think, yeah, it smells similar. It smells similar now, it's just a lot softer. It's gonna be more of a dating fragrance. If you want a louder alternative, you go for Le Male's Le Parfum, which is a smoother, more modern take with more cardamom in there. And I think cardamom is a note that's just generally more romantic, so it's a more romantic take on the DNA. So if you like cardamom fragrances, you want a louder Le Male, go for Le Parfum. Creed's Aventus. When I tried batches from even as late as 2016, 2017, they smelled magical. The opening is just beautiful from Aventus. Even now the opening is still very nice. It's just got a very nice natural smelling, very well blended pineapple. The ambergris, you can just tell, smells higher quality than all the clones that this fragrance has. It's not worth the money now. I paid full retail price for my 2022 bottle. It is so watered down. This is just water now at this point. I recommend you get Nishane's Hashivat instead. It's an expensive fragrance, similar price, but you can smell that pineapple. You get a lot of oak moss. It's rich, complex, very high quality and very long lasting. Creed Aventus just does not last anywhere near enough for the price you are paying. Davidoff Cool Water. I do enjoy wearing Cool Water. I didn't try the vintage version of Cool Water, but apparently from what I'm reading, it smelled like what Creed's Green Irish Tweed smells like today. And I definitely think Green Irish Tweed is a much higher quality fragrance than this. If you want green, aquatic muskiness in a DNA, Cool Water will give you that. Green Irish Tweed has very similar DNA, which takes away the aquatic notes. It's still green, musky, soapy, clean and professional. So I do think if you want the highest quality version of this DNA, you go for Green Irish Tweed. I do think it's worth the money. I know I was just slating Creed, but now I'm gonna support them and say Green Irish Tweed is worth getting. Apparently this just used to be much more powerful, more interesting smelling, longer lasting. Green Irish Tweed in this modern formulation lasts at least 10 hours, so it's definitely worth getting. Tom Ford Oud Wood. This is actually a vintage bottle of Oud Wood. The modern formulation will be shown here on the screen. It has this grey sticker on here instead, and it is rubbish. It's not as good as a vintage. Like a lot of Tom Ford fragrances, in fairness, all of them have been reformulated, I think, due to being bought up by Estee Lauder. So I think the opening of the modern formulation is still very nice, similar to the vintage version. It's just the dry down. The fragrance doesn't last as long anymore. It lasts maybe 6 hours as opposed to what I think I get like over 8 hours, 10 hours with this fragrance from the vintage formulation. I think it's just they don't have that muskiness with the vanilla. Like Oud Wood is a very multifaceted fragrance DNA, and I think the modern formulations do not achieve that. I don't think they could have discontinued the fragrance because it was too popular for the brand, but it's disappointing because a fragrance that does exist still to this day that's copied Oud Wood is something called Thermine's Carved Oud, which I feel does justice to the vintage DNA and actually improves it. So I actually think it's better than the vintage Oud Wood. So I definitely think if you want to get this DNA, you go for Thermine's Carved Oud. It's a blatant rip-off, but it's done it much better. Not much better, but definitely significantly better. And it's similarly priced. Ralph Lauren's Polo Green. Now, I never smelled the vintage version, but I smelled it in shops and I realized how old school it smelled. It smells like an old man fragrance, but that's fine. I like my old man fragrances. What I didn't like was how weirdly blended it was. It didn't smell like any of the other fragrances in the Polo line, but I just don't think it was a very nice blend. And I knew that it used to be an extremely popular fragrance. It might still be, and I read online that apparently it was just much better blended, much more powerful, more manly and masculine. It used to apparently have a much more strong leather and tobacco notes in there. So I think the modern formulation just smells really weird. It's got this old school vibe to it, but hasn't aged well at all, like a lot of other fragrances from the 80s. So I don't recommend Polo Green in its current formulation. If you want a more modern fougere to wear, a more modern barbershop fragrance, which Polo Green is in that genre, go for Tom Ford's Beau de Jour instead, which is a bit more ambery, sweet, easier to smell, and it lasts a very long time. It's a smoother fragrance overall. Dior's Fahrenheit. Dior had to be on this list because I think a lot of Dior fragrances have been reformulated. Understandably, they have a lot of classics. I really like Fahrenheit still to this day in its modern formulation, but I remember smelling this when I was growing up as a young lad on other family members, and it was stronger. It's still very similar scent DNA. It's instantly recognizable, but I think what's happened is that the violet leaf note or something in here, just one of the ingredients probably got banned from regulations, and nowadays everyone says that compared to the vintage formulations, that petroleum notes, which you get from the violet leaf, mainly violet leaf, if you have smelled the essential oil, just smells very petrol-like, and it's no longer there. So it didn't have. So maybe it's okay if you don't like that facet about it, but I quite like that character of it. I would have liked to have smelled the vintage version with that strong blast of petrol in your face, proper manly, proper rugged. This is just like a biker dude's signature fragrance. They can also be worn by a mature man in a suit who wants to, rock it like a boss. This is such a boss fragrance. I still recommend it to this day. There is no alternative to this fragrance. If you do know one, then recommend it in the comments down below, guys. The original Armani Code, which I don't have to show you in person because I've sold it, because it's sort of pointless owning it now. It's really got gutted. I used to own the vintage version myself, much stronger, really projected a lot more. It was such a beautiful, fresh, spicy DNA that had this iconic star anise note, so sort of licorice smelling, but that doesn't do it justice. That doesn't sound sexy, but it was a sexy fragrance. Armani Code, I used to wear it on a lot of dates and it got me a lot of compliments. It has been gutted. The performance is not as good anymore. It used to last over 8 hours when in its old days. Now it's maybe 4 hours, but in fairness, the now new Armani Code Eau de Parfum is a good replacement. It has a lot of that original DNA. It's sort of their attempt at reviving the original. It's not got a star anise anymore, so it did lose a bit of its character there. It's not quite as fresh, it's closer to the skin, it's more focusing on vanilla. It's a more smooth fragrance rather than a spicy fragrance, but it's still very good and I highly recommend it. the original Chanel's Allure Homme. So this is not sport, not eau extreme, which everyone talks about. This is sort of a forgotten fragrance, and I can see why. It's one of those fragrances I really wish performed better. I gave away my bottle. It has such a beautiful, unique, artistic smell, a musky vanilla peach, but for men. Usually peach fragrances don't really work for a man's fragrance. Usually you see peach as a note in women's fragrances instead. So it was really creative. I really enjoyed wearing it, but you just couldn't smell it after an hour or so, and it didn't last on my skin for more than 4 hours. And apparently it was a lot more rich, spicy, long-lasting, lasting about 12 hours in this vintage formulation. It was the first one that was released, of course. I think it was late 90s it was released, 1999, and apparently it was just much better. So I really wish I had a vintage bottle, because I feel that has such a high potential as a DNA. It's very different from the rest of the line, but unfortunately it's sort of been forgotten about in the sands of time. If you want a fragrance with a similar vibe, a creative, fruity fragrance for men that's elegant and creamy like the original Allure Homme, you stay on the same line, Allure Homme, but go for Edition Blanche, which is going to give you about 6 hours, but it's still one of my favorite fragrances in my collection. It's a fragrance for life. I made a video about it, so yeah, I definitely recommend you try that. And finally, Paco Rabanne's Invictus Aqua 2016. I'm not sure if it's counts as a reformulation or more really a re-release, where they made Aqua 2018. It's a different bottle, different packaging, so I guess it's a different fragrance. However, it was very sad for the community when this fragrance was lost. It was a very nice, salty, soapy, very clean aquatic fragrance that had a more smooth, more masculine, more mature take on the original Invictus. That had a very good performance. And with regulations becoming more strict, it's harder to find summer fragrances that perform well. So it was definitely a loss to the community. The Aqua 2018 version lasted about 4 to 6 hours. It's a nice fragrance, has a very nice opening. It's more bubblegum-like, more youthful, I'd say. It doesn't really have that salty quality to it anymore, whilst this lasted about 10 hours. It's a nice fragrance, it gets me compliments. I do not think it's worth the stupid prices you'll probably find it for. You can get some good alternatives nowadays. Rosati House can replace it. It's not exactly a clone, but it's a similar vibe. It's not salty, but strong performing aquatic fragrance. Or you can go for Montblanc Legend Spirits, which is basically a clone of this, 90% similar. It's very cheap. 6 hours performance is not bad at all. And then you also have Paco Rabanne's Invictus Legend, which I feel is a successor of this. It's a nice, sexy summertime fragrance that goes on a sweeter direction, which is unique for a summer fragrance to go sweet. It's salty like this, but more amber-based. So it's a nice, sexy date or clubbing fragrance you can wear, and I recommend you check it out in the line. Also, but beware of the opening. The opening is a bit harsh. That's my only gripe. That ends the video, guys. What other fragrances do you think used to be legendary, but unfortunately have been ruined by reformulations? It's a really sad thing to happen to fragrances. I think the main two ingredients that got knocked the most in the industry are going to be oak moss and sandalwood molecules. So the fragrances that had these packed in, especially like the stuff from like Guerlain in the more old school eras in the 20th century, they are the ones that got hit the most. So oak moss based fragrances, a lot of them got discontinued because apparently it's just been found to be an allergen. All of the citrus molecules got taken away because they're phototoxic, so light skin, these molecules on there, burns, rashes, a lot of things were found to have cancer. I do think a lot of the times reformulations are from regulations. What do you guys think? I'd love to see the hot debate that's going to happen in the comments down below. Make sure to check out our other videos as well, guys, if you haven't in the meantime, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.